Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be joining us. We're getting ready to start our next live ROI webinar for the month of February. And the webinar is open, so looking forward to you joining us in the room. Here, looks like they're coming in. Welcome, Gordon. Hello, Matt. Rumi, good to see you back again. Billy, wonderful to have you with us. My name, as some of you may not know, is Brandt Handley. I'm founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI, and we do retained executive search exclusively for the middle market. And we're just about ready to launch our webinar again. We're going to let a few more people come in. If you wouldn't mind, just for those of you that have arrived, just put a note in the chat box. Let me know that you can hear and see me okay. We've gone through our technical tests beforehand, but want to make sure that everything is clear on your end. Great. Thank you, Matt, for letting us know. Good to have you back. I've got to get up to Boston and see you again. It's been a long time. So today, once again, we've got our next live webinar, and we're going to learn about adaptive leadership. Very, very excited to welcome back Dr. Jeremy S. Lurey. Dr. Lurey, or Jeremy as I know him, and I have known each other for several years. In fact, this is his second time back to the ROI Live webinar series. He spoke with us about 2 years ago. We met through a networking group called Provisors out here on the West Coast. And not only does he have his PhD in organizational psychology, he is square right in the middle of what our mission is all about, and that's helping middle market leaders gain better competencies in the workplace. I see Brad just came in. Jeff Dias, great to have you back. Wonderful to see you. Just put a note in the chat box. Let us know if you can hear and see us okay. Just telling everyone a little bit about our speaker. Jeremy is an executive coach for middle market companies. He works with all sizes in the middle market, but has specialized a lot in family businesses. So those of you that are either creating a legacy with your family, or maybe you're a second, third, or fourth generation family member, I think you'll find what Jeremy has to say incredibly pertinent to what it's all about in the world of making family business work. And I'm very, very excited about welcoming here in a couple of moments. We're going to give a few more people to come in. I know we've got a few folks that have confirmed and they're on their way in, so we'll give it a couple more minutes before we get started. I did want to make a short plug for our podcast series. I know some of you have had a chance to view that. Others have yet not been able to do so. We have now, I think, 55 CEOs that have participated so far, and we've got a great lineup for 2019. It's called Into the Corner Office. You can find it on the resources page on the ROI website. You can also go to iTunes. If you search middle market or Into the Corner Office, that will come up. And we very simply share middle market CEOs and their stories. And there's some wonderful ones there. Most recently, we had Bram Klepner talk about his journey with a pewter company up in the Vermont area. We've had Mike Sharo. Mike is the CEO of the C12 Group, talk about his incredible journey from growing up literally on the line of impoverishment in Alaska to becoming a world-class CEO and leading an amazing Christian men's group out of Texas. And we've got, as I said, about 50 others that are there. It's a great series, and we release one every week. And, literally telling everyone all about how they got to that CEO office. And there's some wonderful things to learn, even if you are a CEO, about how to run a company and the things that are important as it relates to the choices one makes in one's career. Not only with regards to leadership and developing people, but also on those life choices that can have a real impact on, the jobs that you may get selected for or voluntold to do, as some of us have through the course of our career. So once again, welcome back. For those of you that don't know me, again, my name is Brandt Handley. I'm CEO and Managing Director and founder of Resource Options International. We do retained executive search for the mighty middle market. And at this time, I'd like to bring in my longtime friend, Jeremy Lurey. Jeremy, if you'd like to join us on screen, and we'll get started with the presentation in a couple of moments. Good morning, sir. Oh, I think you're You're unmute. I unmute you there, I think.
Yeah, there we
There
go.
we go.
Thank
All
you.
right.
It's definitely a webcast when you leave me on mute.
Well,
So
we
thanks,
like to
Brandt.
see your
Great to
face.
be here. I appreciate your inviting me back. It's been a while. Everyone joining in, great to have you here with us as well. Bill, I hope that you'll be commenting that I look skinny too. I've not been doing the work that Brandt has been doing, definitely.
Well, Jeremy, it's great to have you here, and we're very, very excited. I, in particular, am extremely interested in this whole concept of adaptive leadership. Of course, I've been able to have a quick preview of your presentation, and I'm just so excited to fill in the blanks. So I think without further ado, we're about 5 past. We'll probably have a few more joining us. Those that you are watching the replay, because we know several of you do, please do stick around and watch it all the way through. Jeremy's got an offer for those that are in attendance with regards to engaging with him, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. If you have questions as you go ahead and put them in the chat box. I'll be managing that for Jeremy, but we'll also have some time on the end to ask some specific questions, but he doesn't mind getting questions asked as we go. So without further ado, Jeremy, I'll turn it over to you, mute myself, and let the story begin.
Great, thanks, Brent. And for all of you, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my video so that I can look at the slides with you and sort of read along, and you don't have to watch me looking down and up and all that. So give me just 1 second to stop my video, and then I will share my screen here. So you should now be able to see slides with me. Please feel free to comment if you're having problems or anything, but hopefully we will continue through. So quick background. Brandt shared a little bit about my experience. I am an executive coach. I do serve as a business advisor for clients ranging from small family businesses up to Fortune 500 corporations. My work really spans everywhere from the beginning of helping organizations change, so strategic planning and innovation, to the complete opposite end, helping companies with their exit strategies and succession planning. Brandt mentioned my passion for family businesses, so especially when we have a generational transition happening, I'd love to get involved in helping moms and dads, aunts and uncles pass the baton down to their children, nieces, nephews, and such. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you today. I'm definitely very busy in the mid-market. Many of my clients are mid-market CEOs and senior executives like you. And I like to say that I help people get unstuck, whatever that may be, whether it's a technology problem, vision, leadership and communications, teamwork, helping them get unstuck so they can take their companies to the next level. So today's focus, we're actually going to be talking about adaptive leadership. And the question for all of you is to think about as we get into this: how was last year? Was 2018 a phenomenal success? If so, great. Maybe not so much. Either way, how would you like to make 2019 your best year ever? So my goal today, I'm going to walk you through some background and context for today's marketplace, the constantly changing world in which we live. And then from there, we're actually going to walk through 3 simple steps that you can take, not just to hope or wish that this is a good year, but actually we're going to make some declarations. We're going to declare that 2019 will be our best year ever. So with that, let me start advancing some slides here. How many of you remember this company? The blue and yellow? I can tell you that when Blockbuster was around, my kids were 2 and 4, 4 and 6. I used to love Friday nights. I'd take my kids out to the store. They'd run up and down the aisles looking for their videos. And as you can imagine, we always ended up with 2 videos, not just one coming home because they could never make up their minds. And of course, we grabbed the extra candy bar or that pack of popcorn in the aisles. Then Netflix came around. Most of you, I'm sure, remember when Blockbuster said, oh, in-store matters. We're not going to go to video and distribution by mail. Well, Netflix even realized that that model was not going to continue forever. New technology, digital capabilities, and streaming. So we have the new Netflix where they don't even ship discs. They literally just stream it to our devices, whether that's a flat screen TV or an iPad or anything else. But if you remember walking down your grocery store aisles recently, Redbox came back. Netflix's model was not completely flawed. It was that they needed to find a way to blend the old Blockbuster model of putting it in store with that sort of instant on-demand ready DVD. So Redbox actually is quite successful bringing the best of both worlds together in a very adaptive way. Here's another example. How about this one? Remember the name Sears? The company that basically just went bankrupt, although they auctioned off their remaining assets, their chairman and biggest shareholder. They may not be completely dead yet. Many people around our country here in the US used to wait for that catalog to show up. It was the holiday shopping guide, and they could actually go shopping, flip through pages, order presents for family and friends. What did Sears do wrong? We see examples like this. These superstores came into play. You've got Target, you've got Walmart, where you're not just shopping for clothing now, or maybe some kind of device for the house, whether it's TV, washer, dryer, or anything like that. You can now buy your groceries. I know if you go to Walmart in different parts of this country, you can buy bullets for your guns. I mean, literally, it spans the spectrum, fishing rods, or whatever it may be. But do we really want to go to these brick and mortar stores? Amazon comes around, one of the largest companies in the world now, and it'll ship it to you within 2 days for free. So why would I bother going out, especially for those of you in the Midwest or Northeast, where winter really does mean winter, unlike for folks like Brandt or me out here on the West Coast? Why would you bother going even to a superstore? Amazon bought Whole Foods. Now they can bring you food to your doorstep as well. So as I give you this context for some significant innovations that have gone on over the last 10 to 50 years or more in the case of Sears, I bet many of you are thinking, but Jeremy, we're not Fortune 500 companies. This doesn't really apply to us. We're not even publicly traded. We're a privately held, family-owned business. Maybe we've got some private equity behind us, but we are in the small to mid-market. So I would offer to you, it's not about the competition catching up with you. It's about the market changing and moving away from you. It's about the market literally leaving you behind. So here's another example for you to consider. I'm guessing many of you know what this is. Big, daunting, scary machines called an MRI. If you haven't had an MRI done to yourself, I'm guessing friends or family have. You don't just pop in, pop out like an X-ray, easy peasy. This thing is loud, it's scary, you hear the banging. And now imagine that it's a 5-year-old boy, 7-year-old girl. It's a child who has to get into this big MRI machine. It's not just scary for us who can think about it, it is absolutely frightening for them. What would you do if you were running a few MRI clinics in the Midwest? You knew that that was your market. You served a child population, but more importantly, your customers were the parents who brought those children in. They're the ones paying the bills. They're the ones that you need. What if you tried to just be a little bit more creative? So when I talk about adapting, I talk about innovation. I'm not quite talking about inventing an iPhone. I'm talking about subtle changes like this, where you maybe have never considered, how can you do something subtle with your existing product lines or your existing services that will create a tremendous sea change for your organization? Imagine that same group of clinics in the Midwest. They now have this sort of under the sea theme with the submarine. You can imagine that they can play literally videos of under the sea and Disney cartoons. As much as kids probably don't like the MRI still, they're willing to go in there. I know my kids in dentist offices have similar kinds of things. So again, the increase in revenue and market share within your local communities, if you were to do something like this, the reviews on Yelp and Nextdoor and just all that positive buzz from kids all over your community. If this were the adapting, if this were the innovations that you were to bring about in your company. So I want to give you a little bit of background on what's going on in our world. And I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment and bring up this video for you. Once I can get to it. Sorry, hold on. I need to change my windows. All right, so hopefully you can now see this on screen. I'm not going to play the whole video for you, but I want you to watch. Some of you may have seen the Did You Know series before. It's really interesting stuff that just talks about how change is constant in this world, whether it's technology, it's restructuring, digital media, globalization, what have you. Go ahead and listen in for just a couple minutes here and watch some of the market trends and the changes that are happening in the world around us. So let me go ahead and pause it there. You get the point of this. I'm going to stop sharing Brandt the slides real quick, everyone. And I think it's important to consider, what does this mean for us? Right now, I'm not expecting you to invent the iPad or the iPhone again. But if you look at some of the statistics around things like that that Apple has accomplished, and with Steve Jobs' leadership before he passed, you know, the iPhone's only been around for about 12 years, iPad for about 9. And collectively, those two devices now create almost 3/4 of Apple's total revenue. What are the things that you can do in your own organizations, again, like the MRI machine, to just do something different, subtle potentially, but different, to drive your growth for the next 10 years? Is it a new service offering? Maybe a new product line? Maybe it's expanding to a new market. Maybe it's capitalizing on the stats you just saw about, you know, it only takes 2 years to reach 50 million in this world because of Facebook and some of the digital media. So maybe you're a mid-market company who really hasn't had to advertise before or use marketing. Maybe it's about using some of the digital marketing techniques that are out there so that you can actually push into new markets. Maybe it is about moving into online stores and e-commerce, things like that. So, I don't know all of your companies. I don't know exactly what it is that you do. I would just offer it's worth taking a step back to consider what are the kinds of changes that we can implement to bring about significant growth and drive new business in the years ahead.
Jeremy, I got a quick question for you.
Yeah.
We'll take a quick break. Innovation, and I see this so often with many of my existing family businesses, right? They're 2-3 generations so far. There's kind of this fear factor of, well, what would have grandpa done, right? And they have this very, very unwillingness, to be open-minded about looking at ways to change and to really innovate. And so often it's not so much about, the ideas that might be out there. It's just their willingness to be able to say, gosh, we've got a good thing that's really working. Why should we change it? What do you do in those situations? Do you have any counsel or advice? I've got a client right now today, very successful, $200 million. It's a new client, and we're doing a senior executive search for them. They're working with a computer software, company that's over 20 years old. Their POS in their stores it's ridiculous. They've got, challenges with regards to how they do inventory control, and yet they're using technology that's 20th century, and getting them to kind of wake up and smell the flowers, so to speak, about the new opportunities and new technologies is a real challenge. Do you encounter that, and any suggestions on how to address that?
I do. Thank you. Great question. I don't know exactly where that came from, but great question. Much of my focus, as I shared earlier, is succession planning, helping with that leadership transition between generations, whether it's a family-owned and operated business or you have professional management in place. And it's amazing to me how many times at the beginning of these initiatives, people say, oh, well, Brandt can never fill Jeremy's shoes. Jeremy's been running this company for 25 years now. He started it out of a garage. How's Brandt going to come in and do what Jeremy has done? The reality is, I don't want a successor to look and feel like me in my example. I want my successor to look and feel like Brandt, somebody with new energy, new vision. And oftentimes it requires a generational transition, Brandt. So it requires that sort of, in this case, oftentimes a baby boomer, business owner, CEO to step aside and move forward with whatever his or her life may bring in retirement and the third act. And it requires new energy, new leadership. But for those of you who are not going to have that kind of a generational leadership transition anytime soon, and by the way, Brandt, I have a client, CEO, is trying to figure out how to run this growing company and really take advantage of opportunities in the market. Well, chairman of the board is 91 years old and still the majority shareholder. And you can imagine he's not letting go anytime soon. So in situations like that, I would go back to the Blockbuster model. They thought they had a solid model. They had great market share and the storefronts, the real estate, all that. The market moved away from them. So the best line I've ever used, this comes from Marshall Goldsmith's book. What got you here won't get you there. If you want to stay where you're at now, you're happy with current size and such, fine. Keep doing what you're doing. But I can assure you, in more industry sectors than not, the market is going to move away from you and someone is going to take advantage of that. So in some cases, it's how do we do both and? I'm going to talk in a little bit. How do we do some feasibility studies and some exploratory research to figure out if there is a market there? Recognizing ultimately it's going to come back to capital and that executive decision, and how do we, take advantage of these opportunities, knowing we're not going to invest millions or billions, what have you. So let me pause there with the answer, and I think we'll come back to this.
Yeah,
great question.
Very helpful. One of our attendees said, we'll call it a Jeffism, to preserve the values, you must upgrade the processes.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And
you talk about legacy technology. We've got a client now still on green screen, AS400 systems. And it's painful to use those terms with you all, but they are. And so when we upgrade technology, when we upgrade processes, we really need to upgrade leadership as well. And so it starts there with leadership development and coaching, getting leadership aligned and moving forward, which again, I'm going to comment on in just a moment. So
thank you.
Yep, great questions. Please feel free to keep them coming, and I'm happy to interject them throughout. So I'm not going to play this video for you. This one's a little bit longer, but I encourage you to go watch it yourself. This is a TED Talk by Ari Wallach, and he helps us understand many of our companies get wrapped up in short-termism and sandbag strategies. What do I mean by that? I'll give you a very personal example. Brandt knows that I live in Malibu, California. Most of you may not know where Malibu is, but you likely all heard back November 8th, November 9th, we had a huge fire roar through the area. My home was affected, not drastically, don't pity me, we'll be fine. It's uninhabitable for a while, and we've had to move into some temporary homes. Short-termism is when the next flood comes through, which we know the rains and the mud is coming, you put some sandbags out there. You think, oh, I'll just sort of, protect my property, and then when everything dries up, we'll get rid of the sandbags. It's a very short-term focus. What is the problem I'm facing today? And if I can, address that, we'll be fine tomorrow. Well, Wallach teaches us, stop the short-termism, stop the sandbagging. I should really be looking at my insurance coverage. I should be looking at the structure of my home. Maybe I should be thinking about moving, but really get into the long-term focus, not the short-term. And he's got 3 ways of helping us do that. One other example that I'll give you just more professionally. Short-termism would be where mid-market company, let's say we do 100 million in revenue, but 35 million is with one customer, right? We are very top-heavy and not very diversified in our customer mix. We lose that one account because that company is acquired by a national Fortune 500 corporation. They move around and consolidate. So we just lost 35 million in revenue, literally a third of our revenue. What do? Short-termism says, well, let's go look for one more $35 million account. That isn't going to solve this long-term. This goes back to the Jeffism of we need better processes. We need marketing, sales, business development. We need customer retention. We need all kinds of things. Long-termism is going to be, how do we take advantage of this setback and really grow our company, not just to be 100 million again, but to be 150 million or 200 million? How do we really diversify our customer mix or get into new markets? That would be one way of looking at what Wallach calls the long path, going much more future focused. One way to do this. Many of us get wrapped up in lifespan thinking. Lifespan is how long am I going to live? How long am I going to be in this company? And if I'm a baby boomer who founded it, I'm likely thinking about, my eventual retirement and what I want the company to be now. I have a client in the Midwest, 4th generation family business right now. When we started working with this one president of the company, he was reporting to his father, 3rd generation leader. He had never run a company before in his life. He didn't understand what being a senior executive like that was. And I asked him one simple question. I said, Charlie, why are you doing this? Why are you staying here with your family business? You could go work across the street and make an extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a year. You could probably even go get your MBA, move to a different area of town, different city, make even more. And he looked back at me straight-faced, sitting across this table, and he said one very powerful thing. He said, you know what, Jeremy? I'm not in this for me. I'm in this for my family. My great-grandfather started this business many, many years ago. And when he started, he had a commitment to our family. He passed it down to his son, and now it's coming to me. So I'm going to be 4th generation, but it's not just about honoring my grandfather's legacy. It's about building a sustainable practice for my grandchildren. Now, this person, Charlie, he was about 35, 36 years old. He had just broken up with a longtime girlfriend, so he wasn't married. He didn't have children. And he's already thinking about his grandchildren. That's what I mean about transgenerational thinking. How do we create a sustainable future, not just for ourselves, but for others? Part two here, another way of planning for the very long term. Getting out of a singular future, but thinking about multiple alternative futures. So you may be in one market today. I've got a lot of clients who are in third-party logistics and distribution. Well, within their local market, they may be big players. But one future would be just maintain that business, maintain the core, retain our customers. Another possible future would be expansion. Maybe we want to go from the Midwest down to the South. Maybe we want to move west. Another alternative future would be merger integration. Maybe we have a $15 million family business, and we know in another region, if we're going to spread out, we need to do some acquisition or some integration with another $10 million business, and together we'll be 25. I've got one client up in the Pacific Northwest. This is exactly what he's looking at. He's about a $12 or $14 million business. He's got some smaller players around him that are 5 or 6. He's got others that are maybe 18 to 20. His goal is over the next 5 years, he wants to pull together this sort of conglomerate organization and have a $75 million company. So it's having multiple futures out there to consider. There was an example coming out of Google many years ago. They were considering if their back-end systems would be sufficient and potentially had to move on to different platform. They actually launched 2 different groups of engineers. One to do, I'll call it the Apple solution, one to do the Orange. Everybody thought Apple was going to be the right answer there. Stick with what we are doing. We're just going to continue down the Apple path. Others thought maybe Orange is interesting, but there's no way to last. After 6 months of exploratory research and feasibility, they actually figured out that Orange was the right way to go. So it was only by having multiple futures thinking rather than singular futures that they got to the right place. And then ultimately, Wallet teaches us to what end? What are we doing to drive towards our purpose? Not just the short-termism, not just replacing that one, customer, but the long-term view, having an end in mind. And this really gets at the heart of what I do with my clients, focusing on the future and then planning backwards from that future state. So I use the lighthouse as my metaphor of this. Can't tell you why the water resonates with me, but I've always grown up by the water, went to school in Chicago on Lake Michigan, and the lighthouse is the friendliest form of leadership feedback I've ever seen. So what do we do when the lighthouse comes around and shows us the light? We just look at it and we figure out, are we heading in the right direction? It's important for us to be clear on the destination. Where are we going? And then let's put the plan in place to get there. The lighthouse doesn't call us idiots for going the wrong direction. It just reminds us we might need to take a different tack. And so the lighthouse might be something you want to consider. Call it your guiding light, call it your North Star, whatever metaphor you like. But for me, this lighthouse has always been a very sort of supportive and understanding way of getting there. Okay, so I mentioned 3 simple steps. We're going to go through each of these 3 right now. The first is your vision, your mission, and your values. And I want you to be thinking about, what is your vision for your company? And vision is not necessarily what you do. That's mission. We're going to get to that in a moment. Vision is actually, what is the difference you want to make in the world? My favorite example of this is a world on time. When I say a world on time, who do you all think of? Give you a moment. Great marketing campaign, great tagline. And I know that this company does not consider a world on time their vision. This is sort of my language. But a world on time was great for FedEx to shape the world. FedEx didn't say, we're going to ship your box on time. They said, we're going to create a world on time. And I will never forget the one day I had a package that had to get somewhere the next morning before 10 a.m. I knew FedEx could do it. I got to my local FedEx store at 6:02 p.m. Well, they had a cutoff at 6 p.m. They didn't yell at me. They didn't tell me stupid. They didn't say that I was late and it's all my fault. They just simply said, you know what? We are here for creating a world on time. As our customer, we do everything we can to support you, but we also have a lot of other customers who are on time today, and so we can't take your package. We're sorry. If you want to get it delivered tomorrow, you'll have to drive down to LAX. That store stays open until 8 p.m. to take deliveries. And for those of you who know LA, you know that driving from the Valley to LAX in less than 2 hours was going to be a feat. But that's what I had to do because FedEx was trying to create a world on time. I have a client here in LA that's a not-for-profit. They provide housing and financial aid to people who are homeless and especially those affected by HIV/AIDS. Their vision is a world in which hope is restored and lives are saved through homes, help, and healing. It has nothing to do about them and has to do about the clients that they serve, the population out in the world. So I'd invite you all to consider what your vision is for your company and the world around you. Think 3 years out. That's about a practical, kind of realistic time frame. I know Wallach just said we should be thinking transgenerational. That's just hard for people to put into practical terms typically. So we usually use a 3-year planning horizon. Mission is probably what matters most to all of you. It's what do you do? What is your purpose? The actions that you take in your organization. We manufacture a product, we provide a service. It's an action verb. And some lessons I'd offer for you around your mission. Don't do this alone. I'm sure we have a lot of business owners and CEOs listening in with us today. It is not your job to do this in a vacuum. Bring together your people. Do some ideation, do some brainstorming, talk about your mission moving forward, okay? And then as you refine it, post and publish it. And I don't mean like the placard on the wall. I mean in all kinds of places, whether it's the screensaver on desktops, get into your onboarding programs, make sure that this lives in your organization and use it to engage your employees, use it as a recruitment tool, use it as a retention tool to keep people focused on what matters most. Align people's performance to that purpose, your telos, your mission, right? So recognize your star performers and spotlight those key successes. And then finally, how do we perform? The values are critical. These are your guiding principles. This is the rules of engagement, if you will, to achieve your mission on the way to creating your vision. Core values and goal values. I won't get into the specific details and semantics with all of you. Either are fine. I would just offer goal values are good intentions. They're aspirational. Things like state of the art and best in class. How do you measure that? You really can't. But it's a great aspirational value to have that you want to be innovative with new technology or you want to be best in class in your market. That's great. Typical core values that come back: integrity, safety, customer focus. These are the kinds of things you can measure and really help drive behavior in your organization. Why does this matter? I had an organization once, online retailer. It was getting into their busy holiday season. They found out that their IT director was doing something very unethical. I'm sure you all would agree with that judgment. He was basically going home at the end of the day, and he was supposedly offshoring work to India, and then at the end of the month would pay a bill for this outsourced vendor doing some IT work. Well, after enough data gathering and technology sleuthing, they figured out this IT director was actually paying himself. He was doing a second shift at night from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. And then he was literally paying himself an extra $5,000 or $10,000 a month for that extra work. You can imagine that that doesn't hold up to a core value of integrity, right? But heading into your holiday season, this person was the backbone of their e-commerce platform. What do? They chose that they had to terminate him. It was a breach of their core value. And they had discussions with all their employees to the extent they could share it and say, this employee no longer lived up to their core values. And there was just a difference, so we had to move on. So these are foundational. That's step one of these simple steps for today. Step two, I want to get you thinking about your goals. If anything were possible for your organization, 3 years out, we're using that time frame, what would you have? And there are three real areas to focus on here: your customers, your employees, and your owners, the people who invest in your company. This is a graphic from Chip Conley's book about peak performance, Getting Mojo from Maslow, for those of you who remember the Maslow hierarchy of needs. At the bottom of the pyramid, if we look at the top triangle, this is your company relationship with your customers, your market facing. You want to set goals around your customers, moving from just meeting their expectations, the bottom of the pyramid, all the way up to meeting unrecognized needs. Best example of this, I didn't know I needed an iPhone. I was happy with the BlackBerry. I was happy with the flip phone, quite frankly, if I go back in the day. Steve Jobs and the folks at Apple, his engineers, decided I needed a device in my hand that could send and receive email, send and receive text, could maintain my calendar, could take pictures, could play my music, all in one device that also could be used as a phone. That was an unrecognized need of mine, and I'm very much an avid Apple user now between my Mac, my iPad, and my iPhone. Coming down to the left, the employee relationship. This is your internal operations. How do you perform that work for your customers? How do you meet their unrecognized needs? Your employees do the work, right? Starts with money at the bottom, but the middle of that bottom left triangle is recognition, and then above that, meaning. Especially millennials in these days. They want to have purpose and meaning. We go back to telos thinking. What is it you're here to do? Your mission. What matters most to your organization? And people don't want to just come in and punch a clock as AP clerks. They want to know that they're processing money in a timely manner that allows your company to grow to, I don't know, if you're Bombas socks, which maybe some of us wear, every time we sell a pair of socks, we donate a pair of socks to folks in Africa and developing third world countries. That's a purpose. That's meaning for me as an AP clerk who otherwise is just, punching on a 10 key or entering data into a system. Bottom right, your investor relationship, your owners, your shareholders, for those of you who have either publicly traded or have some controlled shares of your stock. The bottom relationship is your transaction alignment. So some of you may have PE firms behind you. They give you $1. They hope to get $3 or $5 or $7 in return over a few years. But if you work your way up, you get to legacy. Owners want to have a legacy. This gets to that transgenerational thinking again. I mentioned my client, Charlie. He's not doing this for himself. He's not doing this for his children. He's doing this for his grandchildren. So it's important to be thinking about your goals and align them to each of these three categories. We actually do strategic planning with our clients where we'll go through multi-day sessions, we'll have flip charts on every wall, and we will develop goals around each of these three categories. So our external facing market, that's our customers, our internal operations, our employee focus, and then ultimately the owners. In some cases, for your owners, it might be about succession. Right? Somebody, your baby boomer owner wants to exit in 3 years. Well, we're talking about leadership stepping up. You could say that leadership succession is your employee domain. That's fine. All three of these sort of cycle around each other and having an excellent, high-performing organization. So it doesn't really matter as much where you put them as long as you put them in there. Our third piece I'm really going to talk about today. I want to make sure that everybody is mindful about the difference between macro goals and micro goals. We want to make sure that we establish the macro goal, sort of the 3-year planning horizon. But beyond that, we then back into planning our future from the future and where do we need to be acting today or the next 30, 60, 90 days to get us moving towards those macro goals. So for example, on that customer line, let's say that our 3-year goal is to expand from our local geography in Phoenix, Arizona, into New Mexico and California. We're really going to expand outside of our current footprint. So at 3 years, we need to have our first dollar of revenue, or maybe it's our first $1 million of revenue in each of the new markets. Well, back into your midpoint milestone, what happens there? What do you need to be in place 1.5 years or so from now to be on that path to success 3 years from now? Well, maybe we need to have our production line up and running in those new areas. Or maybe it's just simply about having a sales office established with our first producer, our first business developer in place. Great. You're in checkpoint. So we're backing into where we are today from the future, right? So by the end of the year, we need to do our feasibility studies about where in New Mexico are we going? Is it Santa Fe or Albuquerque? Where in California are we going? Is it San Diego or San Francisco? And that analysis needs to be established before we can put our production facilities in place or have our sales offices running. That backs us into 30, 60, 90-day micro goals. So what actions are we taking now? Maybe we don't even know what geographies we're going to. Maybe the first 30 days was just to do a study on should it have actually been Seattle instead of San Diego. Maybe we want to go Pacific Northwest instead of Southwest. So by the end of our 90 days, we've actually started moving forward. We've taken tactical actions and sort of practical steps to move this forward. On the employee side, I'll align to that same one. By 3 years, we need to have a VP of sales, not just in Phoenix, where we're currently located, but in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in our new market, or in San Diego, California. Right, midpoint, we need to be hiring that person, or maybe we already hire them at the end of this year. We need to start training them, and we have them live in Phoenix for a year so they can learn our products and services, what have you. Again, you can understand how these two things relate. Our customer market-facing goals are going to be supported by our employee goals, and hopefully that gets to our owner goals as well, around whether it's equity, value creation, legacy, and leadership succession and such. So pulling this all together, if you want to create a culture of innovation, start thinking about your employee experience. Start thinking about what the climate is people experience in your organization. Are you creating a culture of innovation or not? Are you driving towards creativity and adapting in your leadership or not? You need to start with your vision and purpose. You need it to be inspiring. You need good communications, and several of these things that you can see on screen. Great way of thinking about this. Another TED Talk you might consider looking at when you have some time. Dr. Linda Hill, How to Manage for Collective Creativity. And Dr. Hill teaches us about 3 things. First, creative abrasion. People need to be willing to have the dialogue and discourse, to agree and disagree, to start that creative process going. If you just do the same old business as usual, groupthink, then you really need to reconsider where your market is going and if you are aligned to getting there. So creative abrasion, make sure you create an environment where people can have that dialogue and explore those multiple futures, the alternatives that I talked about before. Then we have creative agility.
Jeremy, got a quick question on that. That's
please.
That seems to run contrary. I was at Procter & Gamble for the first 8-9 years of my career, and I know we've got a couple other former Proctoids on the call here today. And I remember when we had creative brainstorming, because I worked a lot on new brands, it was always, don't judge, right? Let the creative ideas flow. We'll get to the the critical thinking about it or the evaluation later, but you don't want to be abrasive, right? So that you don't, the introvert in the room doesn't feel like he or she can speak up, or, kind of shoot something down too early. Or if a boss or a boss's boss says something, oh, that's a lousy idea, that person, next words out of his mouth are obviously going to be stymied. So help me understand the difference between that and creative abrasion, because creative abrasion kind of feels like, gosh, yeah, no, that's a good idea, or that's not. And, kind of working from a different procedure. So help me understand that a little bit.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. And I'm happy to take some more questions as we move through and we start to close out in a little bit. This is a good clarification. So by abrasion, I don't mean to say abrasive. Maybe better language would be comfortable tension, right? Let people have the conversations they need to have, not just be yes men and yes women out there. Don't just nod your head in a passive aggressive way and be silent. Really come forward when you have questions, when you have new ideas. Not just to say, when I go into companies and I ask, why are we doing it this way? They say, we've always done it this way. That is my first red flag that something's wrong. So if you've got a millennial with a new idea, you've got a business leader you're bringing back from a different geography, or, coming in, like you say, from Procter & Gamble, if you have a big corporate experience and we're a mom and pop, we want to encourage that conversation, that dialogue. So that's what the abrasion is. It's not so much to be fighting and at dukes with each other, but I'll call it sort of a collaborative tension.
Helpful. Thank you.
Yep. Then you get into what you're really talking about, which is the creative agility, which is the decision-making, sort of thinking through the feasibility, doing that research, within reason, right? We're not spending millions and millions, but at least giving people a chance to explore that before we reach resolution. So the third piece here, creative resolution, is where we all chart a path forward together. But it's really a different kind of leadership. Nothing on this slide, this graphic, says top-down command and control authoritarian leadership. This is all about inspiring the collective genius. It's about inviting input from everyone and giving them a chance to participate in the innovative process. As we do that, I'm going to share another example. This was a client of ours a few years ago, did a lot of work with CBS here in the Los Angeles area. And one of their leaders used to sit over their small business organization in a marketing capacity. He used to champion innovation. And a couple of just key highlights here that I'll share with you as we start to wrap up. First off, if you have an idea, you need to believe big time in your idea. Not just sort of think maybe it's okay, because if it's only maybe it's okay, don't bother. But if you truly have some innovative, creative ideas, you need to really believe big time in them. And then start sharing them with others. Start demonstrating how it can help the company in really positive, productive ways. Don't stop. Don't give up where you're going to face some resistance. Keep believing in your idea and bring people together to talk about it. Bring them together in fun and exciting ways. You might be thinking, well, Jeremy, we don't have a lot of funding for this. Well, number 7 tells you find creative ways to fund it. I guarantee you've got pennies underneath your pillows somewhere. You can reduce cost by 10% here, 5% there, just to fund a few $1,000s or maybe $100,000, what have you. But if you look at being more efficient and using your precious resources effectively, you may be able to drive some of this innovation forward, even without a capital raise, without funding from a bank or leaning on a line of credit. The last piece here is really important, the disruptive thinkers. And this gets back to Brandt, your question a moment ago. It's not about being abrasive or offensive, but it's about being disruptive. It's about really sharing your thoughts and helping the organization move forward. Remember, your market's going to move. You want to move with it. Okay, I've got an article about this on our website. I'm happy to share it with you, but just very quickly wanted to give you a couple of these highlights to think about. Last piece I want to share. So we've talked about the market's moving away from us. We need to know our vision, mission, and values. We've talked about setting our goals, our macro goals, and then our micro goals, so we have an action plan that we know how to move from where we are today to where we want to be in the future. This last piece is a really powerful management tool. Stop, start, continue. And you'll see the questions actually move in the reverse order. Continue. What should we continue doing that's already producing positive results? We're getting good outcomes. We want to keep doing it. In the case of our $100 million company that I made up that lost an account, we want to keep talking to our customers. We want to keep engaging with them to see how we're doing, what we can do differently and better. Great. Now that we have this strong foundation, what do we want to start doing? Well, maybe we want to start exploring new markets. We want to move from Phoenix into Southern California or into New Mexico or what have you. What can we start doing to produce even better, even greater results for our companies? And then no harm, no foul, no good or bad judgment. Just simply what should we stop doing immediately? What should I stop doing as a leader? What should we stop doing as a company? Because it's not producing our intended results, or it's producing some unintended consequences. So as a leader, I might need to stop telling people what to do. I might need to start listening. As an organization, we might need to stop focusing on our one major $35 million account. We may need to start focusing on our customer diversity and our customer mix. Okay, so there are a few different examples here about what you can do individually as a leader and what you might want to do as an organization. Okay, so wrapping up here, we got a couple questions coming in I'll try to address. Thank you, everyone, for asking this.
Awesome. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Jeremy. We do have about 7 or 8 minutes, and the hands are being raised. So I'm going to allow a couple of people to talk. We've got Stacy Felder up first. As I bring you in, make sure your mic works and just do a quick test. And then just give us a brief kind of 2-3 second overview of who you are. And then you can ask the question directly to Jeremy. So Stacy, I'm going to welcome you in here. Stacy, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. Yes, we can. Welcome. Great to have you with us.
Thanks. Thank you for the invite. No, you were speaking to, you didn't hit all of the bullet points on one of your prior, there you go, the 10 tips to foster innovation. So who's the best, who do you think is the best? I mean, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about me. I'm from the furniture industry. I have, ground level experience all the way up to executive experience. You know, in a lot of, you know, I've had my hands in a lot of pies in the retail and e-commerce industries. In terms of who do you think is the best, I mean, you hit on number two, so who do you think is the best person to illuminate these opportunities to?
Good question. Thanks, Stacy. And it really depends on the size of the company, depends on where you're positioned. You know, if you're the president of a business unit or service line, clearly you're going to the C-suite and the CEO. If you're a mid-level manager within a function or a department, let's say I go back to the AP clerk, and you know that your green screen technology is outdated, you're probably going to your direct supervisor first to try to get a champion there. If your direct supervisor is not very helpful, you might do a skip level up to a VP of finance, let's just say. And it's not about being offensive or attacking, to Brandt's point. It's simply about creating the dialogue. Hey, I've had some ideas. I went to this conference. I heard this other company is doing this really innovative thing. What do you think about that? Who do you think we could talk to about getting support for this? What are some of the challenges we might face? And maybe you have some, you know, answers for how to address them. Like I said, the creative funding, for example, or, you know, maybe it's just lunchroom talk. You're talking to a few people and you're hearing some chatter. Hey, there are a bunch of us who are thinking this would be a really great idea to move from Phoenix into New Mexico, and here's why. I've got a client here in the LA area in the insurance arena. Given the wildfires and other catastrophes here, California insurances can be tough. They just opened a new office in Las Vegas. They're moving into Nevada. They're slowly going to be moving into the Phoenix Scottsdale area in Arizona. And so it's about, you know, sort of finding the right person, I would say. And it's tough to sort of say exactly who that might be.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Great.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Stacy.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, anyone else? We are getting close to our ending time here, and we want to make sure we entertain any additional questions. Please either raise your hand, put a note in the chat box. We'd love to ask you in to address any questions that you might have for Jeremy. I know we've got a lot of folks here that maybe, you know, pressed for time, but we do have 2 or 3 more minutes. Is there anyone else that's got any other questions? I had one additional one, Jeremy, and that was with regards to innovation. And, you know, you talked about, you know, the importance of that. And we spoke a little bit about how, you know, to do it in organizations that are, you know, a little staid, second, third generations. You know, what would grandpa do, I think is how I phrased it. I've actually heard people say that. Is there a time when companies are too innovative? You know, do you ever encounter clients where, you know, they're so far on the cutting edge that they are just out there innovating all the time and maybe need to slow down a little bit for fear of either maybe taking on too much? And, you know, do you ever see an opportunity to moderate that a little bit in a way that is necessary to ensure that they don't, you know, get the cracks and fissures that we see so often in early stage companies?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would actually start with the more mature companies. I've got clients in the mid-market, you know, let's say 100 million in revenue. They know there's a possibility to get to 200. And for them, they are growing too fast. They don't have the leadership in place. They don't have the structures in place or the systems. They wanted to move from their footprint in the Midwest down to the South. They then were going to expand to the West, and they don't have the capital to make the investment without doing some joint ventures or some private equity, which they don't want to do. That runs against their values of a legacy family business that's currently third generation. So absolutely, I see companies bursting all the time. Going back to the sort of the founder, and you're saying the startups, I would say make sure you get the current solution right, and you try to build that infrastructure with the management team and such first before you try to grow too fast. Get one thing under your belt, and then that start, continue. Then you can start number 2.
Awesome. That's great. Looks like Jeff's got a question. Jeff, I'm going to see if we can allow you to talk. I just put a note in your chat box. If you've got a mic, could you let me know, or I can go ahead and invite you into the room to ask your question? He can't talk. All right. So
that's right, Brent.
Unfortunately,
as I'm answering this, just sort of highlight, I've got my contact info up here. This last slide said, what's your next step? I invite all of you to think of what is your next step? What is the one thing you're going to do based on today's webcast? send me an email this week before Friday. Just tell me what resonated with you. What one action are you taking? You're welcome to send me an email, give me a call. You've got videos on our website and on YouTube if you want to sort of listen to some of this again or go deeper in some of the areas we've discussed. So Jeff, appreciate your question. 3 years out for me, one of my key areas of focus is really getting more into the family from the family business. You know, family businesses in one sense, honestly, are oxymorons. Most people do family or they do business. They don't do family and business. I've always come through the business side as a leadership coach, and I do a lot of work with family businesses, but I'm now in the last couple of years starting to get into the family charter, the family governance, actually developing, in one case, family's got 5 children in the next generation who are minority shareholders because grandfather gifted them from his shares when he passed a year and a half ago. So from 14 to 21 years old, we're helping these next generation leaders learn about the business. And so my objective 3 years out would be to be doing much more work on the family side and helping build these family relationships in addition to the business focused work that we're already doing. Thank you very much. Appreciate the question.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And, you know, Jeremy, I must say that in my practice now with ROI hitting its 10th year this year, the most joy, the most fun, frankly, the most rewarding work I've done have been with second, third, even fourth and fifth family owned businesses. You know, they seem to be the ones that not only are stable, but really require, when they get to a certain point, outside talent that can integrate into their culture. And, you know, some of our most longstanding clients are those types of companies, and they're just a real joy to work with. They're so appreciative with the type of work that we can do for them. And, you know, I share that goal with you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I know we're just at the hour. One last shout out to anybody. If you'd like to jump on real quick and ask Jeremy a question. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for making yourself available. And I don't know, was this your last slide? I think you.
Yeah, this is it right here. So I'm going to wrap up with, again, focus on your mission, make it matter for your employees, set some longer term goals, and then really back in planning your future from the future. If you want to move with your market that's going to be changing, don't sit back like a Blockbuster or a Sears. You really want to start taking some of these creative ideas forward today.
Awesome. And for those of you that are re-listening to this, we get between 150 to 200 of you that come back and watch this. I know for a fact many of our attendees register because we know we send them the replay, Jeremy. Please, the invitation's open to you. Reach out to Jeremy with any questions. I'm sure he's such a generous guy. I'd be happy to give you some time, and you can learn more about his practice and see where he might be able to help you in your current challenge in your business. So, absolutely. Jeremy, once again, thank you for being a repeat presenter for us. And 6 months to a year, we'd love to have you back with another message.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate your time and really hope it's helpful. Good luck in being adaptive leaders and making 2019 your best years ever.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jeremy. All the best. Bye now.